Hi, Debbie here. There's a radio programme in the UK, Desert Island Discs, which has been broadcast since 1942. Guests of the programme are asked what they would like to take to a desert island. They are allowed 8 music tracks, a book, and a luxury item. 10 things. It got me thinking, what 10 art-related things would I take to a desert island? I'm not counting any stamps or products like that. And I'm assuming the island basic survival craft pack comes with pencil, scissors, ruler, glue, etc. I'm talking more the tools of the trade. Let's start with card. I'd choose a watercolour card. My preference is for a £140 cold-pressed card, such as Fabriano Artistico Extra White or Archers. I'd put a couple of those pads in my hold-all. Quality watercolour card makes such a difference to the outcome of the painting, arguably more so than paints or brushes. Moving on, I'd pack an ink pad. Here I'm using Gina K Whisper Amalgam ink, and I'd take that or antique linen distress ink so that I could stamp my images and aim for a no-line watercoloured look. Actually thinking about it, if I could take only one ink pad, I'd take antique linen as it's more versatile for me. I would seriously consider taking a Misti with me. The Misti has changed my life as far as stamping images is concerned. And when you're trying to stamp just enough ink to be visible for no-line watercolouring, but not so much that it doesn't blend in, then a Misti comes into its own. I often stamp images multiple times until I get just the right amount of ink, and I simply won't be able to do that without the Misti. Number 4 on my list would have to be watercolour paints. My favourites are Daniel Smith, and I have accumulated over the years a large number of colours. However, when I travel, I have a small aluminium tin palette with a few half pans of paint. The thing with paints is that you can buy all the colours, or you can have a smaller amount but really get to know them. I sort of combine the two. I'm a sucker for new paint, but equally I do like to play and experiment with what these colours can do. I do this in a sketchbook I've dedicated to colour swatches and colour studies. You can see here how I've swatched lots of different blues with different yellows. When the colours are mixed like this, you can see the myriad of options they provide. For the greens on this spring bouquet image, I chose to combine yellow ochre and cerulean blue chromium to give a hazy blue-green. With this mix, I started to paint the leaves of the image, which brings me on to 2 more bucket list items I'd like to take to a desert island. I'd take a roll or 2 of this 3M painter's tape. I'm sure I could find a piece of driftwood to tape my card down to, and keeping the card flat and preventing it warping helps when painting and gives a better look when the panel is finished. Then of course we have brushes. I get asked a lot about brushes, but to be honest, I'm less fussy about brushes than I am about card and paints. My recommendation is for synthetic round brushes. The best bristle for a brush is supposed to be Kolinsky sable hair, but for various reasons I'm finding myself reaching for synthetic brushes instead. I prefer their slightly firmer nature, and there have been huge improvements in the quality of synthetic brushes over the years. They don't equal water carrying capacity of a natural haired quality brush, but they are getting pretty close. I'd pack a size 2 and a size 4 for card making sized images, and if I could squeeze in another one, I'd take a size 8 for larger areas and washes. So what are we up to? Watercolour card, antique linen distress ink, a Misti, a tin palette of watercolour paints, painter's tape and brushes. I think that makes 6 items. Next, I'd have to include my favourite Winsor & Newton white gouache and Ranger Perfect Pearls. I love to splatter these across my paintings, and also the gouache can be mixed with watercolours to give gouache style paints to use, and also the white can be used on its own for highlights and such. A little bling goes well, and my favourite and the one I reach for every time is eggshell pearls from Little Things from Lucy's Cards. I think that gives me one more item, possibly my luxury item. For me, that would have to be a notebook. I like to write things down, make lists, draw sketches, make notes, and generally work things out in a notebook. I am a natural worrier and use notebooks and apps on my phone as brain dumps. If something is written down in a list, then I can release it from my mind, knowing it is there for reference and to get done when need be, but I don't have to carry it around in my head all the time. So there you have it, my 10 desert island items I'd take with me. I'd love to hear what yours are if you want to drop a few suggestions in the comments. I'm sure once I've read your ideas, my list might change and I'd need to do an update to this video. I'll play some music while I continue painting the spring bouquet image from SNIPS stamp, and I'll be back shortly to finish the card. Moving back to this card, and I used all the items on my list. I debated about adding a T-square ruler, but in the end decided that I could paint a bunch of backgrounds and flowers and leaves and such with supplies I had, and then when I was rescued from the island, I could bring all my paintings with me and make them into cards at that point, where things like a T-square ruler and foam tape and glue would be available. I could even make them into thank you cards to thank whoever had rescued me from the island. Okay, I think I'm in dire need of a holiday, and the desert island is sounding very tempting at present. Maybe I wouldn't want to be rescued after all. I think I'd be quite happy with my paints for some time. I got the painting of this bouquet so far and debated whether to leave it as it was or to die cut and step it up. I went with the latter and die cut the flowers with their matching dye, and this is where the splatter came in, white gouache and then Perfect Pearls powder on a damp brush. For the greeting, I picked this Hope You Are Feeling Better sentiment strip, which I cut out with a clear gridded metal edge ruler and a craft knife on a cutting mat. I painted a loose blue background wash on a panel of card, cut to be just slightly smaller than a mini slimline card base. I'd cut and scored that from Neenah Desert Storm card in the 100 pound weight. I added the background panel to the card base with foam tape, and then added the die cut bouquet on top again with foam tape before the final layer, which was the sentiment strip, which you guessed it, I used foam tape. I added a trio of eggshell pearls with the aid of a Marvy jewel picker and Gina K Connect glue to hold them in place, and then that completes this watercoloured spring bouquet card, which uses the things I would want to take with me to a desert island. I'll link products that I've used today down below this video. The stamp set and sentiment strips pack are both part of a new release from SNIPS Stamp, and I'll have details of the release on my blog post too. I'll pop a link in for that also. Thanks for joining me. I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial, and if you want to see more, I've put 2 videos up on the screen for you to check out. Thanks, and I'll see you next time.